Welcome to the Awaken Your Truth Conversations. My name is Denise with DeniseSimone.com. And today I am thrilled to be speaking with Myra Goldick. Myra is an inspirational speaker and disabilities advocate. She has overcome a childhood laced with racial discrimination, poverty, and disability. As a child completely paralyzed by polio, Myra was told that she would never walk again, and living with it was her only option. After many treatments and surgeries, she slowly began to recognize her own self-worth. She fought for her own physical and emotional survival, rejecting the idea that she had limitations. She dismissed the self-consciousness that comes with having a disability and learned how to respect the truth of who she really is. Through passion, persistence, and her amazing creativity, she has risen above diversity and created a life filled with so many gifts. Myra has become an inspirational speaker, a storyteller, a professional artist, and a radio talk show host of the Never Say Impossible show. Thank you so much for being here, Myra.
It's my pleasure, and I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is wonderful. You know, the intention of these conversations is to demonstrate that we are not defined by our external circumstances. We are not defined by any of the thoughts, the messages, the stories that we are bombarded with from the outside world. And that ultimately we have choice. We have the choice to create our own story, and that our truth is ultimately who we are from the inside out. And your story is a beautiful, beautiful example of that. So I thank you. Yeah. So I want to take you back to your early childhood, kind of painting the picture for us of what life was like for you, and to give us a taste of all the challenges that you were confronted with.
Well, I would be delighted to do that. I was born into a troubled marriage. Second child, I had one parent which was born in Austria and another parent that was born in the Caribbean. So it was confused, to say the least, because it was quite a while ago, and brown was not something that was common in America. You were either white or black. So let's add in poverty, a broken home, and being confused about my identity. So it was a bumpy, rough start. And then at age 10, I came down with a virus that most people never talk about anymore, even though there are millions of us around the world. I came down with polio. So it traveled up my spinal cord and totally paralyzed me. There was nothing. I couldn't even wipe tears from my eyes. And my mother was told I would die, but I didn't. I survived. And I am here to prove to people, no matter how difficult your circumstances are, no matter how much baggage you have or dirty laundry in that baggage, it doesn't define you. You have to start from fresh. You can't allow negative stigmas or thoughts about who you may be to interrupt your life. And it did take me, I don't want to make this sound easy, that I am one of these happy-go-lucky people. That's not true. I was not born a happy little girl. I was born a troubled child. And then it got worse. But, you know, DNA is only part of who we are. And we have control over who we grow into as we grow up. And it really isn't something that you do overnight. It's something you learn to do, usually with the help of others, where you begin to see your value and you stop judging yourself, as you said so eloquently, by the outside world, what we think we should be, what we think we should look like, because that's what society says. And when you feel good about yourself, you begin to grow and you begin to blossom. And it can happen at any point in life. Sometimes people don't face the fact that they're traveling around with lots of dirty laundry in their baggage until they hit midlife. And they begin to say, something's really wrong. I'm not feeling right about myself or the mission that I thought I should be on. So that's why I wrote the books and why I work so hard to help other people find their voice.
Yeah. Yeah. So beautiful. So I want to, before we get into all the beautiful things you're doing in the world today, I want to talk about your struggles first, because you mentioned it isn't an overnight journey. This is something that takes time and it takes commitment. So I want to ask you about how you overcame the mental struggle, because it really starts in our mind, right? The struggle is all in our mind, and that creates our feelings, like you mentioned. And the feelings create ultimately what our reality. So it starts here and then it goes into our emotions, and then outwardly we get to create whatever we want. So I want to talk about the mental structure and the challenges that you have overcome. How did that happen for you?
Well, I had a wonderful mother.
Mm-hmm.
My father was here and there and out of the country. He was a musician and the marriage was broken. It took me 3 years to return to school. I came home a completely different person, with braces, with crutches, in a wheelchair, unable to walk. And I really didn't like myself.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't pretty enough. I was damaged goods. Who would ever like me like that? And it was at a time where it was very scary. Polio was so infectious that people didn't realize once the virus is over, it's like the flu. It does its damage. In the case of polio, it does permanent damage, but you're not contagious. So any friends that I had developed disappeared. So I spent 3 years alone in a wheelchair at home while my mother worked. My brother went to school. And I did lots of things when I finally returned to school to prove to myself that I was worthless. I chose the wrong friends. I felt totally invisible. I was a very self-destructive teenager, and I really felt lost. And I got to the point, the wrong boyfriends, everything that you can do to really hurt yourself. I can't imagine what I put my mother through. But I finally found a teacher who saw something very special in me. I was lucky. I had my art. I went to school, studied art at a school that promoted the performing and visual arts. And she saw the girl that could blossom, not this depressed. I'm going to tell you that I think I was angry, and anger turns into depression.
Yes.
And depression usually turns inward to self-hate. So she offered me special credit if I would do some special assignments. And it taught me that I am responsible for me. Now, at this time I was 17, and it was an amazing transformation. And that too didn't happen overnight, but it was the beginning of an awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm married, young, had children, but I still had the baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And we cannot be fixed by external stimuli. We think we can. We have it all mixed up and confused.
Yes.
We think, oh, well, if I make lots of money and I'm very successful and I'm this and that, I'm going to be happy. No, you have to be happy first. You have to be pleased with who you are and know that you're on the right track. Mm-hmm. So as my children began to grow, when the youngest was 3, I started out I entered the cosmetic industry because it was creative. I had gone to FIT on a scholarship, which is Fashion Institute of Technology. And the cosmetic industry at that particular time was very pseudo glamorous, which worked for me because I was so worried about the external me mm-hmm. and neglecting the internal me. And that was great for a while until I started to feel my body going. Now, I was traveling. I worked my way up into an executive within these major corporations. I was hitting major department stores, and I began to get weaker. So I want to deny that I was seeing a change in my body, that all that I had built up and hiding the fact that I had this disability. I mean, I did everything. If I had to take an executive out to lunch, I would never walk down the street of New York City with them. I would say, I'll meet you at the restaurant in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I would walk through the department stores all the way in the back so nobody would see that I was limping. I lied to myself about everything for years. So what happened? I developed bulimia. Mm. I was really not through with it. I had not really addressed it all. I did go to therapy and I began to learn to deal with it, but it wasn't until I stopped pretending that I had the disability that I began to heal.
Perfect. And that takes me to this next question of accepting your disability. I bring acceptance into all my conversations because I believe it is the most powerful point of transformation. And it is the catalyst to us truly understanding our worth and who we are at our core. Because once we can accept everything about ourselves, we can truly let ourselves shine, right? But when we're in denial, even it doesn't matter what it is, the more we hide, the more life will give us wake-up calls.
That's really true. What ultimately happened was that my company, the particular company I was working for at that particular time, was sold and the headquarters were in Chicago. Now, I was covering about 5 states, mm-hmm. and I knew that running to the airport constantly, going back and forth, my family and I were in New York. I said, I can't do this. And I began to fall a lot. And actually, I ruined my spine. So I had to leave the cosmetic industry. And I went into what I would call a depression because I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to believe it. Even though the doctors told me you have to slow down, you're ruining what you have left by pushing yourself too hard. Now the truth again was in my face. Mm-hmm. So I did leave, but I went back to school and retrained. There goes the gift of the art. I retrained back at Fashion Institute, and I became a designer on 7th Avenue. But it was also a game when I think about it, because it was, well, it was demanding as well. Physically, you have to shop, you have to travel from 7th, at the time, 7th Avenue, this was in the late 90s, early 2000s. 7th Avenue was still thriving. It was beginning to outsource, but it was still great. And just the opportunity to design for people like Oscar de la Renta and famous designers was just too hard for me to resist. And I put myself in harm's way again. Repetitive behavior. I loved it. It was joyful for me. It was I could express myself through the designing. But in 2003, I had one very devastating fall, and my husband said, enough. You are going to stop this.
Yeah.
And I did. And I came to Florida thinking that I would just paint for the rest of my life. But it wasn't enough. I saw a lot of unhappy people. See, I can't ever say that through my careers that I was really unhappy. I was lying to myself, but I wasn't unhappy. I felt so blessed to have everything that I did, despite the fact that I really started out behind the 8 ball, that I felt, oh my God, I've been given so much.
Right. But that was a process as well, right? Finding the gratitude in your circumstances wasn't overnight, right? That was something that you grew into.
I have to tell you a story. It's a little funny. I've told it many times, but as I had to have surgeries on my spine, as now I'm in Florida, I had to deal with it because they said if I didn't do it, I would become a quad. So, okay, I'm going to face it. I'm going to do it. But it did limit my mobility even more. So I didn't want to use a scooter. I have to be honest. I'm completely transparent. I was embarrassed. I don't want to be out there in a scooter. I don't want to speak from the platform in a scooter. I felt this isn't fair. Once again. So I resisted it. I struggled. Anything but not use a scooter. Well, I had to give in. I had to accept it. I had to face it. And I had to believe in myself enough to know that if I am truly who I say I am, then it's not going to make a difference to people. They are going to see me. They are not going to see the scooter. And the first time I took it on an airport, I was terrified. And it was wonderful. I went through security and I got to Atlanta Airport. Now, if you've ever been on Atlanta Airport, you know how huge it is. Well, my husband's got the bag. The scooter is waiting for me when I get off the plane. Oh, my best friend, there it is. It's right there. I don't have to struggle. I don't have to be pushed. I have my scooter. And I start flying through the airport, waving at everybody, the people on the running carpet. I'm going, ha ha, I've gone faster than you. And my husband's behind me. His face is turning red. The veins are coming out in his face. Slow down, he's yelling. And I'd slow down for a little while. And then I'd say, this is terrific. Look what I've been denying myself, the independence, the freedom, for fear that I would be judged negatively. And it was an awakening. I happened to knock down a garbage can, and the transit authority came and said, ma'am, this is Atlanta. You can't drive like that here. It was funny. But it taught me, I don't care what you think. I'm free. I'm blessed. I have the gift of freedom and independence. I have a lift in my car. I go anywhere I want to go. I'm very active. And I want to say to people, it's normal to grieve for things you lose.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process. We all have to go through it. I think it's normal even to be angry for a while.
Yes.
And then it's normal to go through that down period. And finally, the acceptance comes, the awakening that you are still you. You are probably a better person, and you received a gift because you grew stronger through the process. A lot of people waste their whole life looking and searching for happiness, and they don't even understand that it's right here in their own heart.
Yes, yes. So true, so true. It's nothing that we could ever get from outside of us. I want to talk about some of the things you're doing today. The books that you have out. You have a ebook called Focused, Unstuck, and Back in Action. Tell me about that and tell me what that offers for people.
Well, they're really companions. Dancing on Our Disabilities is basically my story, my memoir, and my discovering that happiness is all around us and it's free and it's available to everyone. And Focused, Unstuck, and Back in Action is really a workbook on how you examine what you really feel about life. Because how can you find joy, purpose, happiness, contentment, whatever you want to call it, if you really don't know what it is that gives it to you? And so many people, they know that it's an emotion, but it's not a natural emotion when you think about it. What does a baby do when it's born? It spends the first 8 weeks doing a lot of crying and eating and upchucking on your shoulder. They only learn to laugh by watching us. And they say, wow, hey, mom's laughing, daddy's laughing, I'm going to laugh back. We learn, but naturally we spend a lot of time complaining. And we keep looking for that external fix. The new car, the new house, the new dress, the new boyfriend, the new husband, the new girlfriend. And it never comes from that. That's a quick fix. And then the baggage. You've got the baggage. And in fact, I could think of a few people that are very prominent in politics right now that are doing the same thing. They're looking for a fix.
Oh, that's a whole nother conversation.
That's true. That's true.
Yes. It's so true. When it comes to happiness, it is something that we have to choose. Would you say it's just a choice? And it's where we put our focus on. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's a choice. You can decide that you never have enough. You can decide that nothing is quite good enough, that you're discontent and decide to do nothing about it. You refuse. So many people go to a job they hate. They hate, they hate, they hate. They don't know how to escape. They don't know that with a little work, they can retrain, even if it takes them 5 years to do it. They could take a weekend course. There's so many things people can do to change their life.
I want to jump in because I heard you telling a story about this point in your life, and it relates to exactly what you're saying right now, where you were in your your adult years, and I believe you started to feel defeated again. And I believe you said you were lying in bed and you wanted to give up. And your mind was going in that direction. But you also simultaneously, this is such a powerful example and yet such a simple example. Simultaneously, you asked, while you were feeling those feelings and thinking that thought and those emotions were coming up, you also asked yourself, if I could do anything right now, what would I do? Do you recall this?
How could I forget?
And that led you to making a new choice because of that question you asked yourself. Instead of waddling in those thoughts, you turned it into a powerful question. And a question, given it's the right question, can take us in a whole new direction. And so that question led you to choosing, what did you choose?
Well, I had referred to it earlier. This was when I left the cosmetic industry and I went out on disability. And I was so young and full of energy because I was told that I would totally destroy myself if I kept doing what I was doing physically. And at first, it was okay because I didn't really believe it. And after about 4 or 5 months, I hit a brick wall and I went into a major depression. This all happened in about a 2-week period. And I crawled into bed and I pulled the covers over my head, shut the shades, didn't want to talk to my husband, didn't want to talk to my kids, didn't want to do anything. I was repulsive. I was wallowing in self-pity. And no one comes to a pity party. I don't care if you serve imported champagne, cheese, crackers, no one's showing up. And I ask myself, Myra, can you turn this into a gift? Can you now decide to do something that you've always wanted to do, but denied yourself it because it seemed like too much work, or you would have to give up what you were doing and start again? And I asked myself, and I had 3 choices. They all had to do with artistic activities. And when I made the choice, I said, tomorrow morning, when I awaken, I'm going to get out of bed, fling open the shades, put on my makeup, and start making calls. You can never become stagnant. You must move, because when that feeling comes over you, you become stuck. So I started making calls. I found out about courses I could take, and I was off and running. The darkness lifted. And I was lucky I had the art, but everyone has a choice. You can start teaching people to speak English. You can volunteer in homes where people can't read anymore, read them. There's so much you can do to give value to your life. Just don't wallow in self-pity.
Yes. Action is so important. Taking any kind of action, because we often won't take an action because we think it's the wrong action. But any kind of movement sets us on a path to becoming more clear. But when we don't take any action, like you said, we stay completely stuck. And that just grows and grows and grows. And the more it grows, the harder it is to get out of. So yeah, I completely agree with you. So this has been such a wonderful conversation. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up? Any message that's you are dying to express today?
Yes. I'd like to say to people that they should never use the word impossible, which is why I named my podcast Never Say Impossible. And my second podcast, Dancing on Your Disabilities, because it's a metaphor for learning to dance in your heart and your mind, regardless of what your circumstances are. Never give up, never give in, find a new path. There's always a new path. You never lose without gaining something. So look inward at your beauty and your strength, regardless of how difficult your struggle is. And I know that people have tremendous losses in their life, but you are not meant to give up. You are meant to show your strength. And I know that it's there within all of us. And I want to say thank you so much, Denise, for this. It was lots of fun. And you just learned something new.
I did. I love this. I absolutely love this. This is wonderful. And that's what it really is all about, right? Being open to learning and growing. Every day is a new opportunity to learn something about ourselves and to grow from within. It's what it's all about.
Absolutely. We never transition without growth, and transition is not always easy.
Absolutely. So tell our listeners where you can be found and how they can listen to your amazing radio show.
Okay. If you Google me, Myra Goldick, Goldick, everything I ate for breakfast comes up. But if you want to go directly to my website, it's that's my email. It's myra@myragoldick.com. But it's just myragoldick.com. And the show archives are there.
Okay, great.
I broadcast on Stitcher, on iTunes, on TalkShoe, and TuneIn. So I'm everywhere.
Awesome. Wonderful. This was so much fun. Thank you for being a part of these conversations.
And thank you, Denise, and keep up the wonderful work you do. You're a wonderful, wonderful life coach.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Bye.
Bye.